Are you ready to travel way back in time to the land of pharaohs and pyramids? Well, if you have a big exam on ancient Egypt coming up, then you are in the perfect spot. This is a super fun quiz that's going to test what you know and get your brain all warmed up and ready to ace that test. So, let's get started. Okay, so here's how this is going to work. I'll ask a question, and then I want you to pause this for about 5 seconds to think about the answer. After that, we'll check out the answer together. It's the best kind of brain workout. You ready? Let's do this. All right, first things first, let's lock down one of the most important ideas. Question number 1 is, what is a civilization? Go ahead and hit pause now to think about it. So what did you get? The answer is, a civilization is a place where people live and work together in a really organized community, where everyone has different jobs, like farmers growing food while other people are building houses. If you got that one, awesome job. Muy so. Great start. Now, let's put on our geography hats and figure out where exactly in the world ancient Egypt was. I mean, it's one thing to know what it was, but it's just as important to know where it was. So, question 2. On which continent and in which hemispheres is Egypt located? Take 5 seconds and pause right now. That's it. Egypt is on the continent of Africa. And as for the hemispheres, well, you can think of the Earth like an orange. Scientists divide it into a top and bottom half and a left and right half. Egypt is in the northern half and the eastern half. Okay, let's get even more specific. Your next question. Name 2 countries that share a border with Egypt. Go on, hit that pause button. Did you get it? The 2 countries are Sudan to the south and Libya to the west. You're doing great. Okay, one last geography question for this section. Name the 2 seas that Egypt borders. You know the drill. Pause and think. And the answers are the Mediterranean Sea to the north and the Red Sea to the east. You are a geography star. Now that we know where Egypt is, let's dive into the one thing that made it so incredibly special. All right, now for the main event, the very heart of ancient Egypt. This whole section is about the incredible river that made everything else possible. So, question 5 is a big one. Which river is called the lifeline of Egypt? Pause the video and give it your best shot. Of course it is, the Nile River. It was, quite literally, everything to the ancient Egyptians. It was their source of food, their drinking water, and even their main highway for getting around. Now, for a follow-up, question 6. How long is the Nile River, and what is its unique title in the world? Pause and think. The Nile is a massive 6,695 kilometers long. That's unbelievably long. In fact, it makes it the longest river in the entire world. But this amazing river was so much more than just a long stretch of water. Which leads us to question 7. What important benefit did the Nile's annual flooding have for farming? Hit pause. You got it. Every single year when the Nile flooded, it left behind this amazing, rich, black mud called silt. This stuff was super fertile and made the land absolutely perfect for growing crops. It basically turned the desert green. On that note, here's question 8. Why was the Nile such a reliable source of water? Pause now. Exactly. I mean, think about it. It was in the middle of a hot, dry desert where it almost never rained. But the ancient Egyptians could always count on the Nile. It never dried up, which meant they always had water for drinking and for their farms. It was a total game changer. Okay, ready for a fun one? Question 9. What does the ancient Egyptian name for the Nile, Ar or Or, mean? Pause and think. The answer is black. The ancient Egyptians actually called the Nile Ar or Or because of that rich, dark soil the floods left behind every year. To them, this black mud was the most valuable gift you could ever imagine. See how it all connects? Now for a real brain teaser. Question 10. Where do the White Nile and the Blue Nile begin, and where do they meet? Give it a shot. Pause now. So get this, the Nile is actually made up of 2 different rivers. The White Nile starts at Lake Victoria, and the Blue Nile starts way over at Lake Tana in Ethiopia. They travel for thousands of kilometers before they finally join together in the country of Sudan to become the Great Nile River we know. All right, last question for this part. Name 2 crops that the Egyptians planted along the Nile. Go. If you said wheat, barley, millet, or sorghum, you are 100% right. Any 2 of those work. They used these grains to make bread and beer, which were the 2 main things in their diet. You did an amazing job on the Nile section.
Okay, home stretch. This is our final section. We know where Egypt is and why the Nile was so important. Now let's see how people actually lived their lives and stayed safe in this ancient land. Question 12. Name 2 reasons why the Sahara Desert was actually useful to the Egyptians. Hit that pause button.
That's right. The Sahara Desert was like a giant, sandy bodyguard. Its huge, harsh landscape made it almost impossible for enemy armies to cross, which kept the ancient Egyptians super safe. But what about threats from the south? Question 13. What 2 things kept settlements by the Nile safe from attacks from the south? Pause and think.
The 2 answers are the Sahara Desert again and something called rapids or cataracts. These are really rocky, fast-flowing parts of the river that were totally impossible for enemy boats to get through. Talk about natural defenses. Now let's talk about food. Question 14. Name 2 ways the Nile River was used for food. Pause. The Nile was basically a giant supermarket. The Egyptians would go fishing with spears and nets, and they'd also hunt animals like hippos and birds that lived in and around the river. Pretty cool, huh? Next up, question 15. What did the Egyptians use to build houses, and how did they protect their houses? Pause now.
They used the mud from the Nile itself to make mud bricks for their homes. And to stay safe from those big yearly floods, they were smart enough to build their houses on higher ground, away from the river's edge. Okay, we are almost there. Question 16. Name 2 ways the Nile was used for irrigation. Pause. To get water to their crops, the ancient Egyptians dug canals and used this really clever invention called a shaduf. It worked kind of like a giant seesaw with a bucket on one end and a heavy weight on the other. It made it way easier to lift water from the river to the fields. Speaking of plants, question 17. Name 2 things the Egyptians used papyrus reeds for. Pause. Papyrus was a total super plant. Not only did the ancient Egyptians use it to build things like boats and houses, but they also famously invented the world's very first paper from it. They just pressed its stems together. Can you imagine writing your homework on a plant? Okay, here it is, our final question, number 18. Which god were crocodiles connected to, and which goddess were cats connected to? Give it your best guess, and pause one last time. And the answer is, crocodiles were linked to the powerful god Sobek, who they believed controlled the waters of the Nile and represented the pharaoh's strength. Cats, on the other hand, were sacred to the goddess Bastet, who was the protector of homes and families. It's so interesting how important animals were to their beliefs, isn't it? And that's it. You made it through the entire quiz. You did such a fantastic job working through all of those questions. Seriously, you should be very proud of yourself. You are definitely one giant step closer to acing that exam. Best of luck with all your studies.